argument. So inside of the Buu saga, Dabura is only there for a couple episodes. So it starts off with Dabura fighting Vegeta and Goku, spitting on Krillin, spitting on Piccolo, and then Goku actually says that based off of what he saw, based off the energy that he sensed, based off what he fought, Dabura is actually equal to Cell. So after he says that is when the arc starts to getting good, because the boar goes inside of a meditation chamber and he starts heightening his ki. He starts increasing his ki more and more. And then as we know inside of Dragon Ball, meditation does actually increase your ki based off things like Goku training. After the afterlife, he came back and said, I'm going to meditate to heighten my ki and stuff like that. And then obviously you have the Dabura example. And then he goes and fights Gohan. And then when he fights Gohan, Goku says, shit, this nigga's stronger than I thought. So he says, Dabura is way stronger than I originally thought. And if he originally thought that he was Cell level, and we know that he heightened his ki after that point, then we can infer that Dabura would be much stronger than Super Perfect Cell. I mean, that's what Goku says. He was originally as strong as Cell, and then he gets much stronger. So what does that make him? Stronger than Super Perfect Cell.
Okay, are you done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one sentence statement in which comments on their equality. Secondly, justify that Goku has the correct assessment of a full power cell. Another thing that I would like to add is I can grant that his ki gets heightened, as in his ki level or his ki pool is something which is increased, but does not mean that his manipulation and his precision when it comes to the application is something which is increased in terms of skill, meaning to say that, for example, meditating can increase your ki level. However, if you don't spend the time to actually learn how to control that heightened ki or that new ki level to efficiently apply within battle, then that heightened ki is going to kind of be irrelevant when it comes to sustaining or using it efficiently within a battle. And then finally speaking, just to be clear real quick, when you say that Dabura is way stronger and Goku makes that assessment, if it's off of a comparison of Gohan, why is it not the case that Goku doesn't add up priors to say that Gohan got weaker when Gohan seems to have got weaker due to one, the lack of training, due to two, it being the case that Vegeta comments on him not being of the same level, and then finally speaking, if all that were not to be true, I just have the basis to put your point into question, because it seems to be the case that Gohan doesn't care about fighting at all.
Okay, are you done?
Yep.
Alright, I sent all the scans, and as usual, it seems like Infinity's entire debate tactic is to spit out as much bullshit as possible, to Gish Gallop, to shotgun as much as possible. Nigga fucking spat out 5 points, bro. Listen, the first point that you said was, well, can Goku sense a full power Super Perfect Cell? And the fact of the matter is, yes. It seems like you're trying to be a skeptic, but you're questioning all the fucking wrong shit. That's the most obvious shit inside the fucking show. We know that Goku can sense from King Kai's planet to Earth, and he did that against when he was fighting Gohan. He says, Gohan, you're not going all out. Gohan, you could beat this nigga. Cell is not that strong. He makes all of these statements while inside of King Kai's planet, and we know he can sense from King Kai's planet to Earth because he can sense from Earth to King Kai's planet. That's how he gets there. He uses instant transmission, which is used from sensing ki, and if he can sense King Kai, who has a power level of what, 4,000, then bro, 4,000 is so weak and so minuscule compared to where Cell is. They were 150 million in the fucking Frieza saga, millions of times stronger than King Kai. He could definitely sense Gohan and Cell at that point. And then furthermore, he literally sees Cell in the afterlife. Cell charges at him, so he's gonna be able to sense him. And that's just a fact within the show. There's no contemplating that. There's no skepticism for that. There's no anything for that. You're just being a skeptic, but you're questioning the wrong shit. And then you're questioning Dabura heightening his ki. Well, he can heighten his ki, but that doesn't mean that he's going to use it. Well, what the fuck is he heightening his ki for? Why the fuck did Goku say after... Hold on, I'm not done. Mute your mic. Why did Goku say he's much stronger than I thought? Oh, he just said that because he had the power, but he wasn't able to use it? That doesn't make any sense. That's not parsimonious, and Occam's razor goes into my point. Finally, you made a Gohan point. I'm not exactly sure what Gohan has to do with anything. I didn't make any Gohan point, and you haven't substantiated anything about Gohan, so why should I even take that serious? Dumb.
Okay, so he said that my entire point was a shotgun, even though he spoke longer than me and actually gave more points to me. Secondly, I want him to justify my intentionality because a shotgun requires intentionality to be fallacious. I don't grant that a shotgun, quote unquote, in which isn't intentional, which means to say that a shotgun in which isn't your opponent attempting to overwhelm you with the quantity of arguments rather than the quality is fallacious. He has to explain why that's fallacious. Finally speaking, at least for this respective point, he yes, if you make a claim, I would expect you to prove it, especially if it's a retarded claim such as that. Now, in response to the other shit you said, when you said that you sent all the scans, we can go through each scan individually. You said that Goku can sense full power sail. That's the point of contention. So although within Dragon Ball, yes, I can grant people can sense ki, but whether or not they're able to accurately make an assessment of someone's full power off of the key that they're sensing, especially when it comes to the distance, is going to be the point of contention currently. So what that means to say is that, sure, Goku can make some semi-accurate assessment when it comes to Cell being up close, but when he's using instant transmission to sense someone who is far away, I don't grant that he's sensing them in the same way. Rather than him sensing their power level, I can say that he's sensing their ki, and it's just it's a lot of ki, which makes it easier. But whether or not he's assessing how strong they are off of the key specifically and accurately is going to be something that I'm not going to agree to. So just to clarify for your retarded brain, what I'm asking is whether or not the distance comes into play when trying to manage and assess the strength of someone off of their key alone, because we understand that King Kai's planet is very, very far away. Now, in response to the other shitty points that you gave for the Gohan shit, that's supposed to be a comparison. So it seems to be the case that Goku makes the assessment off of a comparison. He sees that this person fights Gohan, and it's like, damn, Gohan should be at this level. If this nigga's beating Gohan, he must be crazy. He must be amazingly strong. The entire point, at least for this specific section, is whether or not, one, Gohan is of the same level for that comparison to be accurate when it comes to depicting the true strength of Dabura, and then finally speaking, whether or not it is the case that he even knows the full power of Cell, because if it follows that he was sensing the battle from a distance, and for example, Cell possibly use his last powerful attack in the Kamehameha wave, blah, 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 blast, whatever it's called, then it would be the case that if the first point that I gave is true, it would follow that he wouldn't have a correct assessment of his actual true strength. When you say that Cell was going at him, that doesn't mean that he was going full power. That's not what I grant at all. So if you're talking about after Cell died, then he would obviously be weakened from the Gohan fight. If you're talking about another instance, I want you to show that. And then in response to the other point that you gave, listen, because I'm going to say this part slowly. I never made the claim that his ki wasn't hiding retard, and I also never said that he would make the choice to not try to use it. I'm asking whether or not his training also implemented an efficient application of the ki hiding. So what that means to say for a retard like you is, I can grant that his ki was increased, but is he smart enough to also train the efficiency when it comes to applying his ki within battles? So for example, you can say that Yuta has a very large pool of curse energy, but is he able to concisely and precisely manipulate it the same as someone like Todo? Yes, I agree that Yuta has a way larger pool than Todo, but whether or not he's using it to the same level in terms of manipulation is a different point. That's a different topic of conversation. So, yes, he trained, but did he train well? Did he train in a way in which is efficient? Did he train in a way in which is sufficient when it comes to being a better fighter overall? Or was he just retarded enough to meditate and then increase his ki the same as Goku? And then the entire point about the Goku assumption, just to be clear real quick, is that Vegeta makes a comment, but is Goku smart enough to assess that Gohan possibly got weaker, or anything correlative to whether or not his strength is 1-to-1 with the one that fought fucking Cell, you fucking retard? And then let me just clarify this as well for the Judge Midnight. I don't grant Occam's razor being a useful tool for debates. Look, just to be clear, you fucking retard, because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. One, you don't even know what your account of a parsimony is. Secondly, I don't grant most accounts of parsimony. So unless you go ahead and lay out your account of parsimony, then explain why it's reasonable to accept, then we're just going to dismiss that. And then when you say I'm just being skeptic, I'm going to give all the arguments I need to give when it's my turn to scale, if I do scale. Now respond to the point, you fucking autistic bitch.
Okay, yeah, so, I'm not gish galloping, I'm not shotgunning, a bunch of bullshit. This nigga just sat here and talked for 5 minutes, a bunch of bullshit, spewing out as much points as possible. He does this every fucking debate. And I don't have to grind intentionality or unintentional. Gish galloping is just overwhelming your opponent. It's a rhetorical technique that people use. I don't have to say, oh, you did this intentionally or not. Now, to the substance of the debate, back to whether Goku knows about Super Perfect Cell's true strength or not. You tried to make a point, well, he sensed them far, so therefore he didn't sense his true ki because he sensed them far, and since he sensed them so far, maybe there was some drop off. Well, prove it. Sure, that's a possibility. That's potentially the case. Prove it. Where does it ever say anything about drop off? It just says you have to find a key signature. It doesn't say your key signature drops off. It doesn't say anything like that inside the show at all. So I grant that, sure, it's a possibility that's the case. And it also, what it does is ignores what happened inside of the afterlife. So you tried to make a point, well, Super Perfect Cell's going to be weaker. No, he's not. He's not going to be weaker. Matter of fact, if we go to the scans, I posted in scanned, it says Cell, whose strength got way weaker after being cast in. Wait, no, it doesn't say that. It says Cell, whose strength remained the same. It remained the same. It remained unchanged. So it has nothing to do with him getting weaker from fighting Gohan. It has nothing to do with that. That was way after the fact. The battle was already done, like a long time ago. Like, it literally has nothing to do with the case. And then what you're doing is you're making an assumption with Goku. You're saying, well, Goku didn't sense Dabura. Goku didn't sense that previously Dabura was 100 and then he came back at 200. No, he didn't do that. You're also saying that, well, Dabura didn't meditate to go from 100 to 200. No, he just increases pool of ki and he can't actually manipulate it. Well, I'm sorry to say, friend, but if Goku goes and he says, well, Dabura got much stronger, that's not, why are you saying that that's just based off of Gohan, him fighting Gohan? That doesn't even make any sense. Goku has the ability to sense ki. He's literally watching the fight. He could know what level of power Dabura was going from the start of the battle or from the first encounter that he had with him to the second. I think all of your points are just assumptions, they're arguments from possibilities, they're skepticism. But once again, you're questioning all the wrong shit right now. And it's actually kind of embarrassing because I've been debating Dragon Ball for a long time. I've never seen anything like this. This is ridiculous. It's not like fucking chakra. You gotta fucking manipulate it. Like it's not. It doesn't even work like that. So you can go ahead.
Okay, so in response to that retarded ass claim you just made at the end, yes, it is like chakra. You do have to manipulate ki, and we know that because people form their ki in a way in which compacts it. That's how they shoot beams. Okay, yes, a Kamehameha wave isn't just him outputting fucking ki. He actually manipulates it into a form, the same as Spirit Bomb. He creates a big ball. Yes, you manipulate ki. Yes, yay. Anyways, now in response to the other retarded points, when you say argument from possibility, I'm assuming you mean appeal to possibility. This isn't an appeal to possibility because I'm not saying something is true or corresponds with reality just because it's possible. I never made that claim at all. Secondly, notice how he didn't want to talk about the parsimony point because he realizes he doesn't know what he's talking about. Thoroughly speaking, it's the case that when you're saying, well, you're you're overwhelming your opponent. That's not the same as a shotgun. You originally made the claim that I was shotgunning, and then you realized you fucking retarded. That was clearly wrong, so you tried to switch the terminology, dumbass. So just to clarify real quick, yes, if it is a shotgun, which is the original claim you made, it requires intentionality for it to be fallacious. Now, if you're just saying that you're getting overwhelmed by the amount of arguments I'm giving, okay, that's completely fine. You can be retarded. I'm not saying that you're a good debater. Yo, Tom is able to track all my fucking points when I debate him, and I give multiple points. Yo, Tom gives me multiple points. I give him multiple points. He's able to track. Just because you're not able to track doesn't mean anything. So, just to clarify, there's a separation and distinction between shotgunning and then just overwhelming your opponent with arguments. If you get overwhelmed by the amount of arguments I'm giving, okay, sure, I can amp you after. If I shotgun you, then that's an actual problem. So we can talk about a shotgun, but don't try to hedge the claim because you realize you're getting beat up. And Midnight's all gonna realize that you're getting beat up for that real quick. Now, when you say that there's a drop-off, that's not the claim that I made. I said, one, there is a relevant distinction between the two scenarios. The relevant distinction being the distance, or even just a distinction. It doesn't have to be relevant prospectively to you. So there is a distinction, distance. We do know within Dragon Ball that he is able to sense someone up close in terms of their power level, not their fighting capacity, but their power level. What we don't know is whether or not there being a long distance allows him to still sense the same power level. I don't grant that he's able to do that. So I do grant that instant transmission. By the way, let me just clarify this for like this retard. He doesn't use instant transmission to assess the power level of someone, by the way. He uses instant transmission when he's far away to assess where someone is or whether or not they're listening or something like that. But to finish what I was saying real quick. Now, one, there is a relevant distinction, which is the distance. There is a distinction if you don't even deem it to be relevant, which is distance. And then finally speaking for this section, it is the case that he's not even using the same ability when he's assessing the power level of someone off of their ki alone, which does not equate to their fighting capacity. And then also when he's just sensing the ki to find the location of someone. Anyways, now, in response to the other points, just to repeat this for Midnight, because I know what type of judge he is, power level is not reflective of fighting capacity. Or power level is not reflective of fighting capacity at all. Anyways, just to repeat this as well, yes, characters in Dragon Ball manipulate their ki. We see Krillin form his energy in a way in which creates a destructo disc. If he wasn't doing that, then it would just be a ball of energy or whatever else, or whatever form ki comes in intrinsically. We see that they manipulate their ki. We see that he uses instant transmission, which requires ki. That's different from him shooting a Kamehameha wave. Yes, he flows ki throughout his body. Yes, there are characters who apply and reinforce their body with ki. Yes. Now, finally speaking, you ask, why are you saying it's off of Gohan? That's not what I said. I said, one, he makes the assessment that we see seemingly off of his fight with Gohan, and then everything else that he's going to be able to use to assess Dabura's actual strength is not going to be a valid method, because one, if it's the case that he's sensing his power level, that wouldn't be accurate when it comes to depicting his fighting capacity. And then if he's using something else, I want you to show that he's using something else. And then the statement that you sent, let's go to it real quick, man. Cell strength who remained the same. This seems like it's talking about power level. So if you weren't listening, what I said is that it seems to be the case that one, he had an imp at the end of his battle with Gohan, which may have increased his strength within that instance, meaning that he's not comparative to this specific version of Cell. And then finally speaking, even past the imp, let's say the imp was not something which is applied, it also seems to be the case that this was a final attack, which most people use their most energy in. Most people use the maximum amount of energy that they have within their final attack, meaning that it follows that his average power level, which is in this instance, may not be equivocated to the power level on which he used against Gohan, and which that is going to also correlate back to the original point, not necessarily, but it's going to be tied a little bit to the original point of whether or not it is the case that Goku can sense their actual power level and fighting capacity. Yeah, I got you, Bruce. Anyways, their actual power level and fighting capacity given the distance. Okay, so yes, there are burdens on you currently. All the burdens you placed upon me seem to be irrelevant because those are claims I didn't make. You have to actually fucking chat and track. So look, listen with your ears, respond with your mouth. Don't listen with your mouth. Over and out.
Yeah, this debate's over, bro. This is why Infinity had to get his fucking loud mic. I've never seen Infinity mic be this loud in a debate yet. This is why, bro. If you know Dragon Ball, you know this nigga's fucking being retarded right now. I'm gonna tell you why. First of all, his whole assumption is that, well, what Goku's talking about is his fighting capacity. Well, Dabura is a lot stronger than we thought. His ki heightened. Oh, well, no, that's just a pool. He can't actually manipulate it. Well, what the fuck is he heightening his ki for? You still haven't answered that question. That burden's on you. According to you, he's just heightening his ki for no reason. His ki is just increasing for no reason. Nobody in Dragon Ball I can recall I've ever seen increases their ki and is unable to fucking use it. What the fuck are we talking about? Even Gohan, when he was a child, his ki increased 1000x as a fucking baby, and he was able to use all of it against fucking Raditz. So I don't know where this thing of, oh well, he's just heightening his pool of ki and well, he doesn't actually have access to it. And actually Goku, he actually talking about his fucking fighting capacity. I mean, it's just ridiculous point after ridiculous point. And then about the distance, once again, you have to prove that there's actually a that distinction actually makes a difference. Just because there's a distinction doesn't necessarily indicate that there's a difference in the way that he's sensing in terms of the power. So what I use to prove that he is able to sense is the instant transmission, not that he's using instant transmission to see exactly how strong they are. That's the distinction there that I'm making in my own point. So you're just using a bunch of straw mans, you're just using a bunch of obfuscation, a bunch of shotgunning, a bunch of gish galloping to try to get around that fact. Even if you want to say, yeah, whatever, there was some drop off with the distance, he didn't accurately sense Cell, you can say that, but the scan that he saw him in the afterlife said Cell remained the same strength. what you're trying to do is you're trying to reframe the scan. You're trying to say, well, Cell didn't remain the same strength because he got an amp from a Kamehameha. First off, prove that. What amp are you talking about? I don't even know Cell. I've never heard that before. Cell got an amp during the father son Kamehameha. I've never. If anyone does Dragon Ball, you guys can send me that just in case, because I've never heard that before. I've watched all of Dragon Ball. That's actually kind of crazy. I need you to prove that he got some kind of fucking amp. But even if he didn't get an amp, then that would mean that his strength didn't remain the same in hell. It's that simple. So your point is contradicted by the scan that you tried to debunk. Honestly, Infinity, this is one of the worst skeptic performances I've ever seen. You're trying to put a bunch of burns on me that I can easily prove that I've already proved, and that is clearly indicated by Goku, by Vegeta, by the guides, by the further context inside of Dragon Ball.
Oh my god. Okay. Oh my god. So when it's intuitive that he got an imps consistently within fiction, we see that fictional characters get imps whenever they're in a life-death situation, especially when it's a villain and he feels like he's about to lose to someone who he deems to be way weaker than him. In response to the other points, one, I never said that there was a difference. I never made that claim. You have to listen. I said that I apologize. I never said that the difference was relevant in a way in which will be correlative to the argument that you're giving. Additionally, I don't need to justify that there is a relevant distinction, even though I did give justification off of the basis that there is a distinction in the ability usage. So you actually have to give the justification when it comes to there being a non-difference. When you make the claim that there is no difference, then you have to give justification that there is no difference. Now, you didn't make the claim explicitly because that's not what you do. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You made the assumption that there's no difference. Now, if it's the case that he's using a different method to assess someone's strength and then also sense their location by using their ki, you have to justify that using instant transmission, he's able to assess the power level at all, even power level, fighting capacity, anything of Cell. So I can grant that he used instant transmission to sense the location of the fighter, sure, but I do not grant at all that he's able to sense the power level, fighting capacity, skill, anything at all of the characters in which are fighting at the point in time, which will be Gohan and Cell. Now, when you say that Gohan, when he had a large burst of ki, when he had a large burst of ki when he was a kid, used all of it. One, I don't grant that. Two, if it were the case that he used all of it, there's a relevant distinction between Gohan and Dabura. We know that Gohan, it has innate talent when it comes to being a hybrid Saiyan, meaning that it should be the case that he just is talented when it comes to application of ki in comparison to Dabura, which we do not know whether or not he has innate talent of the same level. Another thing is, just to be clear, he was also amped. So Gohan had an anger amp within that instance, which is actually what caused the increase in his ki amount and manipulation. So obviously we also see consistently in fiction, at least off of my priors, at least I don't care about your priors, that characters consistently have a way better chance, or I apologize, a way better time of manipulating.
Did he cut out for anyone else? I think you cut out.
Wait, hello?
I'm not even trying to rat. I think you cut out.
Right now?
I think you cut out. I don't even want to rat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I'm still cutting out.
You're cutting out, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we understand that consistently in a fiction that when characters have some anger emotion or some emotion of the same level, there is an amp when it comes to Hello?
You're cutting out, bro. Maybe turn down your loud mic and you wouldn't fucking cut out, bitch.
I don't have a loud mic, you fucking retard.
Oh, you don't have a loud mic, okay. And while you're literally clipping. What the fuck?
Are you dumb because I'm lagging?
Who are you fooling, Infinity? Who are you fooling?
Oh, wait,
we can hear your fucking keyboard. We can hear your keyboard.
Wait, guys, look at chat.
Get back to the fucking debate. Say your point.
Next to my mic.
Say your
guys, look
say
at
your
chat. Yo,
clip,
guys, look at chat.
Say your fucking point, bro. Nigga's still clipping. Like, we all know you have a loud mic. I've never heard you this loud, bro. Hurry up, say your fucking point so I can rebut.
Hello. Yeah, so look, Hermes, one, mute him real quick. Secondly, this nigga's fucking retarded at chat. Alright, look at chat real quick. I know Hermes, he's actually retarded as fuck. Like, if I wanted to loud mic him, I could.
Bro, restart your fucking router, bro. Reboot that bitch, bro.
Bro, is
We
he
can't hear you,
is
bro.
he here?
We can't hear you, Infinity, no. Nigga said his him is retarded. All right, bro, chill, bro. Yo, Midtop, bro, how far is this debate, bro? You enjoying this, bro?
It's all right, bro. I just don't like the skeptic shit. I think he's questioning the dumbest shit. Actually, I think this is one of the dumbest debates I've had.
Let me let up Infinity,
Let
bro.
me ask Mita something. I guess after the debate.
Okay, please mute this dude real quick. Or he doesn't know what like he's retarded. Like I'm sorry that I'm skepticizing retarded claims that you're making. Like yes, if you make a retarded claim, I'm going to skepticize. I'm not about to grant that the bar was like 20,000 times stronger than what he was usually. Yeah, nobody's going to grant that fucking retard. My bad that when you say that you're a god, you're omnipotent, you win a debate. That I'm going to question all that. Yes, just because there's a large quantity of skepticism doesn't mean that the skepticism is unreasonable or bad. Now to finish what I was saying, one, it's intuitive that he had an amp at the end of the battle because that it seems to be consistent with my priors, respectively speaking. Secondly, my kind of parsimony when it comes to using my priors is much more consistent than your kind of parsimony, considering what you tried to use and say was parsimonious earlier. And then, by the way, he ducked that point because he didn't want to actually get slammed on it. And then, in response to the last few points, real quick, one, why can he sense power level off of instant transmission, especially off of that distance? So there's two factors. One, if it is the case that he's able to sense power level off of instant transmission, why would it follow that given a distance, he would still be able to do that, even though I don't grant Midnight that he's able to do that at all using instant transmission? Another point that I would like to clarify that I said earlier that I might have been cutting out for. So just to clarify, I don't need to prove that there is a difference, even though there is a or there is a difference, which is the fact that there's a distance between the instance where he's sensing a power level, the instance where he's not sensing the power level, and then I apologize. There's this between the instance where he's sensing the power level within one scenario, and then when he's not, or when he is sensing the power level in a different scenario, there's a difference between the distance. Secondly, there's a difference between ability usage, and then even if there wasn't a difference between ability usage, which there is, by the way, he already grants it, but he can't even justify that there isn't one. If he does say that there isn't one, I don't grant that at all. That when you guys finish your points, let me know so I can with the talking stick. Okay. I don't. Anyways, one to finish what I was saying
This
before I
dude is
started
still
cutting out. I was saying that
yapping.
Gohan has innate talent, which seems to be a symmetry breaker between him and Dabura, because we don't know, we can't determine whether or not Dabura has innate talent the same as Gohan. Two, I don't grant that he was going all out against Raditz. Three, if it was the case that he was going all out, I don't grant he's able to control him going all out. I believe that that's the Rage hybrid Saiyan form that he was in. Finally speaking, if it was the case that he was going all out and he was able to control it, I just believe that when he has an anger amp, which he did have an anger amp, by the way, he just saw something happen that made him mad. He had an anger amp. It's just consistent within fiction that anger amps or emotional amps or mental amps of that level allows for easier manipulation of whatever the power source within the verse is. So we see that with Yuta, for example, in Jujutsu Zero. I have powers for this as well. So we see it with Yuta. Whenever he's using his C or his whatever it's called CE against Kenjaku or Geto, he gets an amp and he's in a state of Historia, which makes it easier for him to manipulate and reinforce his body against him. We see it with Naruto. Whenever he gets an anger mental state, it follows that there's also an easier method to use there when it comes to the flow of energy manipulation. We just see it consistently. And then finally speaking, you fucking retard. Whenever they say that, and listen to the point when I say this, okay? This is the strongest point you've ever heard in a debate, okay, mid top? Whenever they say that he's as strong or he's as strong as he was prior, listen, okay? We don't know if they're talking about power level, fighting capacity, skill, potential, etc. So I would say that Cell is very highlighted in strength in terms of his potential to adapt and also his power level, for example. But that's just my opinion. What do they mean? Are they categorizing fighting capacity in the sense where it's talking about his way of fighting? Are they categorizing strength in the sense where they're talking about his way of fighting plus the potential in which he possesses when it comes to adaptation? Or are they talking about power level alone, which isn't reflective of your actual ability to fight. And then also, listen, I'm not saying that he's trying to do this thing in the sense where he meditates to gain higher ki, but he doesn't use it. That's not what I said. He can use it, but whether or not he trained to use it efficiently or in a way which is going to be relevant within the battle is the entire point. Did he successfully come out with better manipulation of his key? Sure, I can grant that there was a higher pool, but is it the case that he came out with a higher pool plus efficient manipulation when it comes to application within the battle? We don't know that, you fucking retard. It's not called baseless skepticism because there's a basis. It's called you being retarded and not knowing how to justify your claims. So you try to be rhetorical by saying, "Oh, you're just a skeptic. You're just a skeptic." If you have something you want to put in question, I can argue for any claim that I made, but you're not. This is not what you're about to do. You're not about to say some random bullshit that you heard Jester say before and then say I made that retarded ass claim. No, I actually make claims in which have embedded brain cells within them, unlike you. Okay, so to finish what I was saying, you fucking retard. One, let's say that he intentionally did go in there to only increase his key. Yes, there is a benefit from only increasing your key. So, although you're not able to manipulate as much key or more key, just because you only heightened your key in terms of the long run, it is the case that you're going to have more key to pull from when it comes to the case that the battle is longer, okay? So you have one scenario where you're only heightening your key so you don't run out of key faster, and you have another scenario where you're heightening your key, plus also your manipulation so you can produce much more powerful or much stronger attacks or much long-lasting attacks, okay? So yes, there is actually some reason behind why you would only go into a training facility to heighten your key, the same as why you would only go into a training facility to heighten your stamina, which you may not also go into a training facility to heighten your skill or the power of your punches, etc. There's conditioning for specific things. I understand that you're fat as fuck and you don't do any sports, but yes, not everybody goes into a training facility and trains every single part of their body. They look at what they need to improve on. Like, for example, Dabura can see something like, damn, I run out of key fast as fuck. Let me increase this shit. So he goes in a training facility, takes a BBC, and his key is increased, okay? Now, what is the response besides saying that I'm shotgunning what you dropped, saying that your point is more parsimonious what you dropped, and realize that you were losing on, and then also saying that it's not talking about a comparison when it comes to his Gohan fight initially when the assessment was made, which you also dropped because you realize you are retarded.
I guess the more Infinity loses a point, the longer he talks in the debate. I'm not sure if anyone else notices it, but this dude literally talked for 10 minutes just yapping about a bunch of bullshit. Okay, I'm not sure if anyone caught this, but he literally said, "I don't use parsimony," and then used parsimony to prove his point. I don't know if I'm just going crazy, but he literally said, "My point is true due to parsimony." He literally used parsimony. Like, what are we talking about here? Oh, but parsimony, I don't believe in parsimony. Anyway, if Occam's razor is false, then why is your only argument for Cell getting an amp mid father son Kamehameha is intuition? What if I just say, well, my intuition is that he doesn't? Matter of fact, all of the scans that I see, all of the Dragon Ball that I've watched, just says that he fired off a Kamehameha. We don't see the Kamehameha getting bigger. We don't see any comments from any of the cast of characters. We don't see anything like that. So why should we assume that because it's quote unquote intuitive, he randomly got an amp, and even if he did get an amp, that would just apply to hell? Now you're trying to be a skeptic on the word of strength. You're trying to say, well, that could just be his ability to his ability to fight, or his ability to, I guess, have some sort of martial arts combat. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying, but what I do know is that when you look up the definition of strength, it has nothing to do with your fighting capacity or your fucking potential. I think that that's just way less parsimonious than just using the regular definition of strength. Strength typically refers to someone who's strong, to someone who's more powerful, to someone who could, actually has more ki, especially inside of Dragon Ball. When someone is being said to be stronger, then they typically have a stronger battle power. Matter of fact, I actually did look up the definition of strength, and it specifically says the quality or state of being physically strong. And now, if you look up what strong means having the power to move heavy weights or perform other physically demanding tasks. So he literally has the power, more power to withstand force, pressure, or wear. So strength inside of this scan, even if you look at the kanji, it also refers to power. So you can't just get away by saying, well, strength, he has more strength in the fact that he can fight the same, or he has as much power as in he could fight the same, because that will be a misuse of the word strength. That will be a misuse of the word power. You are also straw manning my instant transmission point. I'm not saying that he can sense the level of power using instant transmission. What I'm saying is that using instant transmission, he's able to sense at all. So I'm essentially saying that he's able to send from King Kai planet to the Earth effectively because he can use instant transmission from the Earth to King Kai's planet. Instant transmission works like this: you send someone, you find you and locate their key signature, and then you teleport to that location. Therefore, he's able to sense. If he's able to sense from King Kai's planet to Earth, then he's able to sense what's going on. And then that's why he's able to make statements such as, "Go on, you're holding back. Stop holding back, go on. You could beat Cell. You're way stronger than Cell." He makes all of these statements based off of him sensing the battlefield. Why would he make the statements if he's not able to sense? You have to answer that question. I think the final thing that I really want to address is the point about, because you literally talk for so long about him heightening his key. So if you really look at the statements, this is what they say. Dabura is going to heighten his key before fighting. They say that Dabura is raising his key higher and higher. Then they say that he entered the meditation chamber to heighten his ki before doing battle. Now you're trying to say, well, that could just be referring to him getting a stamina boost. That could just be referring to him, being able to fight for longer because he has a higher pool of ki. He's not actually able to manipulate it. Well, the fact of the matter is that yes, it does. If you heighten your ki, then your power goes up, your strength goes up, your speed goes up. We see this with things like the Kaioken. We see this with things like the scouters that sends ki, and if someone has a stronger or higher battle power than the other person, then they're able to beat them in a 1v1. It isn't the thing of, oh well, he has more of a ki pool. It doesn't actually work like that. Your ki is a level of measurement that you're able to use within a fight. It isn't the thing of, well, uh key comes with you being able to manipulate it at all, because based off of what we've seen inside the show, even when characters such as Gohan as a child gets more key than they typically would be able to handle, now you could say that, well, was he full key? Was he not? He was not full key because his regular battle power was 7. He literally was like 3 years old, and then he got a shot up to like a battle power of 1,000. I mean, obviously, he's going to be way above what he's typically able to do. And even during that case, he was able to beat the shit out of fucking Raditz. So you can use that point. And then also, we also have Goku saying he's much stronger than he thought. So this will go into your misunderstanding of the word stronger. What does Goku mean by stronger? Why is he saying stronger? Well, according to you, Goku's just saying stronger because, well, Dabura can fight good, or Dabura Tabora is fighting Gohan and he's not actually sensing them. He didn't actually heighten his ki. We're not going to use the most parsimonious or the interpretation with the least amount of assumptions. We're going to use the interpretation with the most amount of fucking assumptions. We're going to use the interpretation that has the least explanatory power. We're going to use the interpretation that goes against the textbook definition of strength. We're going to use the interpretation that goes against the already precedent set inside the show. If a character is stronger in Dragon Ball, they are stronger in terms of their ki. He heightens his ki. This is a very simple point that Infinity just seems to be misunderstanding, mischaracterizing, and strawmanning for the sake of writing because he doesn't actually have a fucking point.
This nigga. Oh my god. Okay, one, we say that when characters are stronger from Dragon Ball, this is a set of definition. They're talking about ki. I don't grant that. I do not think that it's consistent at all that Zeno, someone like Zeno specifically, has a large amount of ki. So I want you to justify that someone like Zeno has a large amount of ki, even though they consistently refer to him as the strongest within Dragon Ball. So it's
What?
obviously the case that Goku, for example, seems to have a higher amount of ki because they consistently highlight it for him, but they never highlight his ki for Goku. Or I apologize, Zeno. They never highlight Zeno's ki. They never highlight specifically Whis' ki, but we know that these characters, Zeno being the best example, are much stronger than people like Goku, Vegeta, etc. They're consistently called the strongest. And then even if we look on the outside perspective and say that, no, by our definition, Zeno is actually weaker than Goku. We just know that the author, the one who's writing your own fucking shitty ass verse, I'm sorry for calling Dragon Ball shitty, I apologize, I take that back, is calling Zeno stronger than Goku, even though he never highlights the amount of ki that Zeno has, even though it seems to be the case that Zeno doesn't have that high level of ki, which is why the Korean priest does everything for him. That's one reason that's why that would be the case. Now, when you say Goku made a statement about him being much stronger, the point of contention for that specific section is whether or not that is a relevant assessment. Is it the case that Goku's retarded? Is it the case that he's making an accurate depiction of strength and which is reflective of Dabura's? No, we don't know that. That's the entire point. So you're just saying I'm being skeptic. When you make a lot of retarded points, yes, I'm going to be skeptic. Like I said, if we get to a point where you want to question something, I'm completely fine with justifying and arguing for that side. But you're not. This is not what you're about to do. You're not about to make a retarded claim, like I said, and then just call me skeptic the entire time because you realize that the retarded claim that you made is retarded and you can't justify it. Now, in response to the other point, I never said that they're talking about, and let me just make this clear real quick. Goku calling someone strong, strongest, strength, whatever, him using any of those terms is irrelevant because the author's the one who made the comment about Cell remaining the same strength. So Goku can have his own definition off his prior experiences, but that's completely separate from the narrative statement. The narrator says that this nigga is the same strength from X, X, Y, and Z. Goku made the statement currently that this nigga is much X, Y, and Z stronger than B, Y, and B. That's completely different. So off his priors is completely different than off of the author's priors. Now, this is a very important point that I'm about to bring up. So listen, okay? It's more consistent that within language people use colloquial definitions. So when you bring up the denotation, which there's 2 points I want to make for this specific definitional point, when you bring up the denotation, that seems to be relevant because one, it's much more consistent for people in conversations and in text to use the colloquial definition. Two, the colloquial definition are going to be off of their surroundings. So obviously, if we model our colloquial definitions off of our surroundings, then you using an English dictionary is not going to be relevant when we're trying to represent something which was made within another nation. And then finally speaking, you using an English dictionary which seems to be modeled off of realistic events, such which is why it talks about physical capacity and which is limiting itself to naturalistic laws, is not going to be something which is relevant to a verse like Dragon Ball, which isn't limited to naturalistic laws. So when they say that strength is talking about, for example, being able to complete a physically demanding task, I don't believe at all that the person who wrote that definition down has the idea in mind that there exists key, and which is separate from your own personal physical capacity in terms of, for example, your lifting strength or your punching strength. I don't believe that they're talking about Kamehameha waves or destructo beams or destructo disc or whatever the fuck they use within Dragon Ball. Okay, you fucking retard. So one, the notations are not going to match up one to one with the verse, or I apologize, with the verse, because it seems to be the case that there are things in which are incompatible with the definition that they're talking about, or even if they are compatible with the definition that they're talking about, it's a case that we don't know if they're using that compatibility to work towards them, or rather they're just remodeling the definition entirely to work within their own fucking verse. So yes, the denotation is completely fine whenever we're trying to explain things within reality, typically speaking. Two, it is the case that denotations aren't even consistently used within conversations, and especially in text that are outside of the nation, denotation specifically from Oxford at that. And then finally speaking, the definition that you gave doesn't even seem to be inconsistent with the definition that I gave. You fucking retard. And then just to clarify, I'm not saying that they're using the definition within the sale text. What I said was is that we can't determine what definition that they're using because it follows that it seems to be a case that it's highlighted specifically for sale that his potential is amazing, his adaptability is amazing. But are they talking about that? Are they including that within his fighting capacity or strength? Or are they talking about his power level? Or are they talking about his key amount? Because you believe they're talking about his key amount. It doesn't even make any sense. Someone who has a higher key level is stronger than somebody else. That's the definition of strength. Strength is off of your key level. I don't grant that. That seems retarded as fuck, you stupid bitch. And then I also can grant real quick. And yes, I can grant this. And listen, because you're going to say this is a concession. Listen with your ears, not your mouth, okay, retard? I can grant that it's actually the case that it's consistent that characters in Dragon Ball, and that's why I don't grant your account of parsimony, which is something I want to clarify, by the way. I never said I don't agree to parsimony, you stupid bitch. I said I don't grant your account of parsimony, you stupid bitch. Anyways, just to finish what I was saying, I don't grant that. Or I apologize. I grant within Dragon Ball that it's consistent that people with higher power levels are consistently able to beat characters with lower power levels. But I don't grant that power levels are one based upon key, and then two, there are outliers such as Zeno. I don't grant that Zeno has a higher key level than Goku, but I do grant that Goku, I apologize, Zeno is considered to be the strongest in the verse. So why is he the strongest? Well, it's because of an ability in which he has that disqualifies all of Goku's relevant features when it comes to his fighting capacity. For example, he's erasure. Now, from what we've seen, he wasn't even able to track the disc. I forgot his name, like the Dispo. I'm pretty sure his name was Dispo or some shit. Something within the tournament of power. People were moving so fast, in which they're slower than Goku, by the way. He wasn't able to track that. He needed Grand Priest to create a device for him. So it's obviously not talking about overall strength because he gets blitzed by someone like Goku in terms of speed. So it must be talking about his fighting capacity, which includes an ability in which he possesses that allows him to disqualify all the relevant features of another fighter. Okay. Now, yes, I'm going to be giving a long essay response because you gave multiple points in response to the other shit. When you say that Dabura, yes, his keys increase, blah blah blah. The entire point is whether or not they're just increasing their overall fighting capacity. You using the Gohan instance is irrelevant. I already explained the symmetry breakers. All you're doing is presupposing the assumptions you made initially when you gave that retarded ass fucking example. Gohan is one, someone who is a hybrid Saiyan. He has innate talent. Gohan is two, someone who's amped in that instance due to anger. And then finally speaking, I don't even know if Gohan purposely used all his power in a sense where he's manipulating it, or if it's just a case that his anger amp took control, which seems to happen a lot with Saiyans. They get angry and their body, in terms of their consciousness, loses control and start just applying their power to its maximum level. You fucking idiots. So when you say that you could just also use their intuitions, there's a relevant distinction with that as well. My intuition has priors. Additionally, when you say that, well, we don't see the Kamehameha wave get stronger, that implies that he didn't just use his full power, his maximum power, before releasing the fucking Kamehameha wave. What your situation implies is that he was using the Kamehameha wave, and then for my point to be true, it has to follow that the Kamehameha wave got increasingly bigger. I never said it was an exponential amp. I just said that intuitively speaking, it seems to be the case that since he's a villain, and in villains within their, especially villains like him, who have the mental state of being non-humble in comparison to everybody that they believe is way stronger than them, before their death, they try to apply their maximum power. That's the comment that I made. I said that's intuitive. When you say that, for example, well, we didn't see the beam get stronger, that implies that he wasn't maximizing his beam before he used it in a sense where it wasn't exponential in terms of the imp, but rather it was an imp that he had prior to the clash. He realized that the battle relies on this clash. If he wins the clash, he wins. If he loses the clash, he loses. So he got an imp for that specific instance because that's the life and death instance. And finally speaking, I'm pretty sure we actually do see the beam get stronger on both ends. From what I recall in Dragon Ball Legends, we see that Cell used the beam, and then after the initial burst, it follows that the burst got stronger and bigger. So I don't even think that your point is true. What is response to what I said? Strength as a word is polysemous. I don't know why you're trying to use it in a specific way in which is limiting to physical demands or physical tasks, when we know that within fiction, there are models in which are not limited to naturalistic, especially physical laws. Go ahead. What's the response, you fucking retarded ass, bitch ass, baboon ass nigger?
All right, bro. So, going over all of that obfuscation, all of that gish gapping, once again, I feel like his point is just to spit out as much bullshit as possible as much amount of time, so I can't actually respond to anything that's literally textbook gish galloping. That's literally shotgunning. So I literally cannot respond to everything, nor do I have to respond to everything because it's a gish gallop. It's a fallacy. So when we actually go into the merits of his point, his whole entire point, or a big chunk of his point, hinges on strength, not actually being referred to someone who's stronger, someone who's faster, someone who's more powerful, not faster, but someone who's more powerful. And the fact of the matter is, yes, it does. Can you show me one colloquial definition? You keep appealing to colloquialism. Can you show me one colloquial definition that talks anything about fighting capacity, referring to strength? I mean, let's even put this inside of real life. When we look at the UFC, someone can be stronger and lose the fight. We don't say, oh well, Ngannou is stronger than Stipe Miocic, therefore he's gonna win. Or we don't say, oh, he beat him, therefore he's strong. We don't use stronger like that in any sense. Has anyone inside the fucking who's watching UFC or boxing ever said, oh shit, he beat him, therefore he's stronger? No one says that at all. That's not even a colloquial thing. And I watch UFC, I watch boxing, I watch all those different things. So other than that, other than the misappropriation of the word stronger, in which strength actually doesn't, strength for the definition I pose, it doesn't go into your point at all. It literally says physically strong. I think you have a misappropriation of key on what that is. And I say that because what power levels are given to you by the amount of key someone has, or you didn't know that. For example, when we first see scouters, what do scouters measure? They measure the ki that the other person has. When Goku has Kaioken, which doubles his attack, which doubles his speed, what happens? His power level doubles alongside of it. What does Kaioken do? It multiplies your ki. So when his ki multiplies, his strength multiplied, his power level multiplied to the same degree. He started off 8,000. He multiplied his ki to Kaioken times 2, let's just say. Then his power level became 16,000 and his attack and his speed doubled. That's what's being stated from the Kaioken. So, other than those two major points, Infinity literally has nothing to show for it other than obfuscation. And another thing that I want to mention, where the fuck does it say that Zeno doesn't have the key? You tried to say, well, Zeno doesn't have key because Grand Kai does it. So if I'm a king, let's just say I'm a king inside of a fucking castle, and I have my guards put someone out, does that mean that I couldn't have done that myself? No, it doesn't. That's really a fallacy. So you actually have to show that Zeno doesn't have the amount of key that someone like Goku, Gohan has at all for that point to go through. I'm actually fucking. I feel like we're going in circles because it's the same point.
Are you finished?
Yeah, I want to go to conclusions.
Okay, I don't really care what you want to go to. You're not about to place a burden upon me and then realize that I'm about to disprove the initial claim that he made. So everybody, this is the initial claim that he made. I'm just being skeptic. That's all I do. So this is what we're about to do. We're about to give some justification, guys. We're about to give an argument. So I understand he doesn't know what a formal argument is. And Bruce, I know you're going to hate on me in chat. So we're going to give the argument informally real quick. So just to be clear real quick, the motivation and justification, man, real quick, is just going to be simply one, the priors. And then the actual informal argument I would like to give is we see in Dragon Ball that they consistently highlight the strength of the characters, especially Zeno. They try to make him out to be this very top tier strong guy, the same as they do for Goku. But whenever they do that for Goku, they highlight all his relevant features. So it seems to be the case that the only relevant feature they highlight for someone like Zeno is his ability to erase and disqualify the relevant features that other fighters possess. Okay, so whenever you say that you need to prove that he has no key, I never said that, retard. I said that it seems to be the case that his key is just something which is relevant when it comes to battles in comparison to everybody else. Because one, if it is the case that your fighting capacity is based upon your key alone, we see that he's not even able to see Dispo, which careless, can you please send that scan or someone please send that scan? He's able to not sense Dispo and all them niggas fighting in the tournament. Secondly, I never said that just because he applies usage to Grand Priest that entails that he doesn't have adequate strength. Never said that. And then finally speaking, it's all for the consistency that we have. Whenever there's a character within Dragon Ball that has a high level of something, they consistently highlight it. Vegeta, they comment on his key multiple times. Goku, they comment on his key multiple times. Whis, they comment on his speed and his ability to dodge things effortlessly multiple times. But for Zeno, they only comment on his ability to erase things, which gives me the impression off of this clear manga where there's clear depictions of narratives for personal characters that this nigga Zeno doesn't have a high level of key. Now, in response to the other points that you make, whenever you say it's fallacious, I want you to explain how you getting overwhelmed by the quantity of arguments is fallacious. Now, I can grant 100% that it is the case that it's fallacious if I'm intentionally attempting to overwhelm you, or if I'm intentionally trying to overwhelm you because I'm relying on the quantity rather than the quality. However, I don't even think that you're getting overwhelmed by the quality. I apologize, quantity. I think you're getting overwhelmed by the quantity, but by the quality because you're fucking retarded. Now, in response to the other points that you made, well, just to clarify for Midnight real quick, I don't grant that that's a shotgun. I don't grant that that's fallacious. Now, listen. When you tell me to justify that there's a colloquial definition which talks about that, I'm just gonna rely on myself. So look, I would colloquially say that someone is stronger if it is the case that they have a higher fighting capacity. But guess what? That depends on context. As I've already said, strength, stronger, strong is a polysemous word. It changes through context, which is why when you searched up on the Oxford Dictionary, there are multiple definitions listed. It's because it's polysemous. It's not mono. It's not one definitional, okay? There's multiple analytical criteria for the word in which we're talking about. Strength, strong, etc. It is polysemous, okay? If you ask people in chat, they will also grant the fact that strength or stronger can be off of fighting capacity. So I can say that, and I would say that someone is stronger than another person if it follows that they have a higher fighting capacity. And then when you say that, well, when we watch UFC, we're not going to say that someone is stronger or they have higher strength just because they beat them. Look, just to be clear, just because you have a different method of analysis when it comes to determining who's stronger doesn't mean that everybody shares that analysis, you fucking retard. So sure, you can say that for yourself, but actually a lot of people that I know would look at a battle and say that, wow, they fought 3 times, therefore this dude is stronger than them. And guess what they're going off of? They're going off of their fighting capacities in comparison to each other. So when I fight time beats me up every single time. Therefore, in respect to the attributes that he has, in which he exhausts within a battle, his fighting capacity is higher to me. But I'm not going to say fighting capacity. I'm going to say that he's stronger than me because that's simpler. That's a word that I'm going to label. That's what I'm going to use to describe what I'm talking about. Okay, it's almost epithetic. Now, in response to the other points, when you say that power level is given to you about the amount of key that you have, I don't grant that either. I would also just say that you form some thoughts, you codify some thoughts off of what is given to you. What that means to say is you make an educated guess. That's what I believe a power level is. So you make an educated guess off of their key level, and then consistently in Dragon Ball, people with high levels of key are able to manipulate their key. So Goku, for example, or I just Vegeta, for example, can look at someone's key and say, damn, this nigga has 15,000 key. I'm going to say that his power level is 16,000 because if it is the case that all the people that I fought prior have this high level of key and they're able to manipulate it, I'm assuming that this guy's also able to manipulate it to at least this average extent. So if I weigh both his key level and his ability to manipulate this key to an average extent, it is the case that I come out with this key level, and then you keep on relying back on Kaioken. And just to clarify, you fucking retard. Yes, Kaioken does increase your key, but guess what? We have confirmation that Goku is able to actually manipulate the key, and which is derived from Kaioken. Additionally, we also know that he applies Kaioken in a way in which doesn't require extensive control of ki. He applies it on his body to amp him physically speaking. Most of the time, he's also able to manipulate the Kaioken energy into a Kamehameha wave, but that does require manipulation. We know that Goku is just good at controlling his ki. Like, that's not a good example. There's a symmetry breaker between one, the scenario where Goku's using Kaioken, and then this scenario where there's a lack of knowledge. The symmetry breaker being the lack of knowledge when it comes to the determination of what he trained for, because we know that Goku trained overall for Kaioken, and then finally speaking, the lack of knowledge when it comes to what his hidden key does. So we know that Kaioken has a specific task of just two timesing whatever we're talking about. So if in this instance it will be his key, but his key he applies it to his body, and then also he manipulates it to a Kamehameha wave or whatever attack he's intending to use. We just know that he's able to manipulate the hidden key. The entire point of contention is whether or not Dabura was able to manipulate his hidden key. You fucking retarded ass bitch. Nowhere within the statement does it imply that he's hiding his key in a way in which allows him to manipulate it. Secondly, I'm not even saying that he can't manipulate it. I'm asking whether or not he trained to manipulate it efficiently. So, one, if it is the case that he didn't train to manipulate it at all, and we're going to say that he can't manipulate it in terms of increasing the strength of specific attacks that he has or increasing the potency of specific attacks that he has, temporally speaking, then I'm just going to say that it's completely reasonable for him to just train his ki because he assessed due to his prior battles that he has a stamina issue, and then obviously a heightened level of ki is going to erase that stamina issue. And then secondly, if it is the case that he also is able to manipulate the heightened ki and it isn't just for a training level, that he trained in a way which allows him to apply it efficiently within that short amount of time. Or it doesn't have to be a short amount of time, but efficiently. Listen to the fucking points, okay? So, yes, there are multiple burdens on you. I've justified all my burdens. Go.
Okay, I feel like if you're actually paying attention to the point or to his points of the debate, you would really, yeah, we can conclude right after this. If you actually really listen to the arguments that he's giving, they're actually really bad. So not only did he say, well, Zeno is only highlighted by his existence erasure, therefore he only has existence erasure. Well, the fact of the matter is that's an argument from silence. That's literally a fallacy. Just because they only say Zeno is highlighted by his fucking erasure, which I don't even grant, by the way, can you prove that? Can you prove that only Zeno's highlighted by his existence erasure, not his power, not anything else? Can you actually show that? I don't remember that inside of fucking Super. Not only that, you tried to say, well, he can't see Dispo. If you look at the fucking clip, he's looking at him on a fucking tablet. Can you actually prove that he can't actually react to Zeno when he's looking at him on a fucking tablet? That doesn't even make any sense. It's like me trying to say, I can't even see this fucking car while I'm looking at the car, while I'm looking at the NASCAR on my phone. Like, maybe the phone's the fucking problem. Maybe the tablet can't keep up with Dispo speed. How do you know that? Another thing is that you tried to say is Gish Galloping fallacious. Yes, Gish Galloping is fallacious because what you're doing is you're giving me a bunch of bullshit arguments as fast as possible. This is literally an informal fallacy. Everyone knows this. When you do Gish Galloping, not only are you just giving a bunch of non sequitur points. You're giving a bunch of false points, but you're trying to spew them out in as much time as possible because it takes less time to spew out a bunch of bullshit than it is to debunk each individual bullshit. But I got time today, so I could do that. Next you try to say, well, strength colloquially can have multiple definitions. Well, first off, every word has multiple definitions. That doesn't mean that you can't denote the most reasonable conclusion from a word just because it has multiple definitions. That literally doesn't even make any sense. Every word has many different definitions. Just because like that doesn't even make any sense. Then you try to say, well, I said, okay, well, prove to me that there's another colloquial definition for strength that fits this better. And then you said, I'm gonna just rely on myself. Well, yourself is not sufficient justification, doesn't have sufficient explanatory power, as I could just say, well, I could rely on myself to say that it doesn't. How about this, Infinity? I can rely on myself to say that, colloquially speaking, it always means strength. I can just rely on myself to say that you losing this debate. Relying on yourself isn't actually sufficient justification to prove a point, especially in linguistics. Linguistics is one of the points where you actually need a sufficient amount of people or a collective to agree on the definition of words. So you can't just say, well, I think that this is what this word means, therefore it means that. And it's actually funny because you tried to say that that's what I did. So you're using a double standard. You're trying to say, well, I say that I don't use strength in the UFC context, therefore you're relying on yourself, and your point doesn't make any sense. But you just did that when you tried to say that strength colloquially means fighting abilities or whatever the fuck you tried to say. So as for the Kaioken debunk that you tried to point out, what's actually being done in Kaioken is a direct correlation and causation from ki to speed to power to all of those different things. So inside of the Kaioken, what Goku actually does is he increases his ki. He increases his ki times 2, which causes his speed, which causes his durability, which causes all of his stats to actually times 2 themselves. And that correlates and causes the scouter to go up exactly times 2. So the most reasonable conclusion is that ki has a direct correlation and causation to power level. It has a direct correlation to how strong you are, how fast you are, how durable you are. We see this inside of literally every single fight. If you have a stronger power level, you have more ki. If you have a weaker power level, you lose the fight. We literally see a direct correlation from power level to ki. And in fact, the scouter is sensed by their ki. So all of this bullshit about ki has nothing to do with power. It's literally all an assumption. And then you say all that to say, well, he can manipulate his ki. I'm sorry to tell you, but every single example that we see inside Dragon Ball of someone increasing their ki results in their battle power and their power level and their fighting capacity to actually increase. And what I mean by fighting capacity is particularly power, all of their stats to actually increase. So we see this with the Kaioken, we see this inside of the Saiyan Saga, we see this inside the Frieza Saga, we see this inside of the Cell Saga even. So to say that, well, Dabura is just increasing his, no, I'm not Jamaican, but to say that Dabura is just increasing his ki pool, that's inconsistent with what we see inside of Dragon Ball. I'm ready to conclude. I think we're going in circles. I literally
No, look, so he says we're going in circles after giving 15 new retarded points. No, look, you can talk to your brain cells real quick, the last that you have remaining before I destroy you real quick. But look, so one, Ryan, please send the scans as anime only. Two, it's not an argument from silence. An argument from silence is when you say due to the lack of silence, there is a conclusion which is inferred, a positive conclusion at that. Thirdly, you can make negative conclusions from argument from silence, quote unquote, or in other words, to better word it for a retard like you. Yes, you can form negative conclusions from silence. Yes, you can say that because there's silence, there is not silence. So yes, you can actually infer conclusions from silence. If by argument from silence you mean something else, then you can name that. Additionally, against the Allen fallacy also requires intentionality because that's when you attempt to overwhelm your opponents in quantity as well. You try to overwhelm your opponent in quantity of possibilities or potency rather than actually focusing on the accuracy or strength of the arguments, you have to justify that that's the intention I have here. Like all you did was get beat up on why it wasn't a straw man or shotgun, I apologize. And then you jump to a different fallacy in which also requires intentionality, which you can't establish here. Now, when you say that, well, you can't prove that the tablet was deficient. Okay, like listen, I don't know if you actually watch Dragon Ball, if you're Radin or something like that, you fucking retard. But the reason why they created the fucking tablet was because he couldn't sense with his own abilities. He couldn't sense with his own abilities the speed of the people who are fighting. That's why they made the That's why they made the tablet. Another thing is when you say that, well, when you say that you're relying on yourself, I can just say that colloquially, it doesn't mean this. Yeah, that's the entire point. If you say your definition of colloquial, I apologize. If you say your colloquial definition does not entail this, then that's just respected to your epistemology. Just to be clear, due to the nature of words themselves, you are able to do that. Yes, you're able to be self-reflective when it comes to mental states when deciding what something means due to the nature of definitions themselves, because definitions are fucking subjective, you fucking retard. They're subject to the mind. Analytically, you idiot. So yes, you can do that. Yay, mid-top. You discovered that definitions are subjective and you can have a definition that you want, any definition that you're choosing. And just to clarify, when I say polysemous, I'm talking about denotations in which change to meaning. No, not every single fucking word is polysemous. That's not true at all. There are words in which are not polysemous. You have words that are polysemous, and you have words that are not polysemous. Because denotations may not change within context. Yes, definitions may be able to change within context because you can give a retarded definition of anything. Another thing is when you say that the power levels are referring to all these things. That's the point of contention. Justify that it's talking about what you are talking about. You just repeated yourself. There's no actual fucking evidence. And when you tell me you want me to go through all of Dragon Ball to show that they don't highlight his amount of key and that they only highlight his erasure, one, I never said that they only highlight his erasure. The entire point, as an example, was that they specifically highlight his erasure, but they never highlight his key. And then I'm not about to go through all of Dragon Ball, so I'm just going to give an inductive case real quick. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Yeah, so it's the case that I have at least one scene where they don't highlight his key, which is the scene where he's trying to track the speed of Dispo and whoever the fuck he's fighting, which he's inadequate at doing, by the way. And then you have no scenes on your end. Therefore, I have some inductive case. And then especially by your parsimony, not saying that I agree with it, but especially by your parsimony, respectively speaking, it's the case that I actually have the likelihood increasing argument currently. All right, but just likelihood increasing point, which makes my argument more acceptable currently. So yes, the Oculus Razor, which is the thing that you accept as a retard, I actually have the more parsimonious points, even though I don't grant that account of parsimony. I already gave justification in my account of parsimony, which you have yet to explain your kind of parsimony, by the way, because if you're just going under ontological parsimony, I don't grant that being something which is efficient to use within fucking debates, at least fictional debates at that. And then when you say that Kyle Kin, listen, fucking retard. I'm gonna say this one more time, and then we're gonna conclude on this specific Kyle Kin point because you keep on trying to go on this. Please enforce this, Hermes. Like this is so fucking retarded. Kyle Kin, yes, it is 2 times of his key. But one, I want you to show the exact description of Kyle Kin because I don't even know if it's actually 2 times in his key in the sense where he's pulling from key that he never had, or if he's just maximizing the key within his pool and then applying that to his body. And then finally speaking, if it is the case that he is just actually pulling it out of nowhere, he's pulling it out of his ass, Kyle Kin out of his ass. You saying that it just amps it just heightens his key, but it doesn't actually apply or increase his application of stats, is you just repeating yourself. That's called a question beg. If you debated D1, you would learn this as well. That's called question begging. Okay. So what is the argument justification that you can give or deliver as to why Kyle Kin? Because I already gave justification for my end. I already gave priors for my end. What is the justification? I gave instances for my end. What's the justification you can use that all Kyle Kin does is hiding the key of the user rather than it hiding the key of the user while also allowing them better manipulation of their techniques due to the hiding key. Or I apologize, not better manipulation, but Goku, who uses that hiding key in which he has access to better manipulate and power the potency of his techniques. So what that means to say is that on your end, for your point to be true, the manipulation, quote unquote, the manipulation is not something which is directed by the user, but rather is directed by the amp itself. It would be the case that Kyle Kin, as a form, alone grants the power to all these techniques, which I don't grant. I don't grant that Kyle Kin alone increases the power of Command Wave. What I think he's doing is that he's applying Kyle Kin and he manipulates that excessive amount of extra key that he has, the 2 times specifically, to increase all the other applications of his stats, which seems to be consistent. You saying it's not consistent or saying that your side is consistent. It's just you repeating your point. There's no justification for that. Like, the fuck? And then in response to the other fucking point, you saying that it's consistent within Dragon Ball that people with higher key levels win battles, all that, blah, 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 blah. All the examples you gave, just explanations. So, for example, Super Saiyan increases your ki, but it also increases your power level, ki control, etc. All right, but just it allows you to pull more from this ki, which allows you to manipulate things efficiently. It allows you to manipulate your ki efficiently. You're trying to use arcs in which Goku is the main character in. Yes, I grant that it is the case for Goku. I already said this when you gave the Kaioken point. So you're using the same saga to showcase how Goku, who achieved Super Saiyan, was one stronger off of Super Saiyan alone. That doesn't equate to him being stronger off of Super Saiyan alone in terms of the ki amount, but rather he has a higher level of ki. But Goku is someone who already knows how to train. He goes into training with intent. He also knows how to manipulate his ki efficiently. So you keep on trying to match on the example that you're trying to use, which is Dabura onto fucking Goku. No, that's called that's not matching. That's disanalogous. That's not analogous at all. Okay, so we have these known variables in which are applied to the Goku analogy or example that you're trying to use, while there are unknown variables when it comes to the Dabura example. We know that Goku's a Saiyan, which makes him innately more powerful than any other race in terms of conventional task. We know that Goku knows how to manipulate his ki. We don't know if Dabara knows how to manipulate his ki to the same level. I don't grant that he's able to do that. He's never highlighted for his ki control. I agree that his ki was hiding, but why was it hiding? That's the point. Why was it hiding? Was it hiding to increase his stamina or how long he can endure a battle? Was it hiding so he can have more to pull from when it comes to potency, etc.? We don't know that. It's not called basis skepticism because there's a basis. There's a basis. It's called lack of knowledge, you fucking retard. You're just repeating yourself. So when you say that fighting capacity is what they use, I never said that that's what they use. I'm saying that's what I use. And then it would be completely fine if they use that, rather than assuming that they're using your retarded definition just because it's denotative. And also, just to be clear, I never said just because a word is polysemous, that doesn't mean that one denotation is more likely. Two, I don't grant that denotations are more likely to use than colloquial definitions. Three, you fucking retard. The entire point is that you have to justify that your denotation is likely when it comes to matching on to what they're talking about within the verse, especially since there are symmetry breakers and relevant distinctions, such as them not being limited to naturalistic laws within the verse, while the person who made your denotation is limited to naturalistic laws. So it would be the case that they have at least to make some alteration or change. Like, this is basic shit. So whenever you say something along the lines of, well, I get that he's using instant transmission, but yeah, the point is whether or not instant transmission allows him to sense the key and then off of that sense the power level. So yes, he's able to sense the location at the time of the battle. But is it the case that he's sensing the strength of the users? I don't grant that. Yes, I can also grant that he's sensing the style of key. So there could be a nature of the key, like the same as within JJK, there's a nature to your CE Yuta. You're able to sense Yuta when he comes. You're able to sense Rika. That nigga, I'm pretty sure it was Yuji, was able to sense and say that, wow, Yuta's CE reminds me of Gojo's when it comes to the nature. So yes, you can sense the nature of Ki within Dragon Ball, which is probably what he's doing. And if he's not doing that, he just be sensing the power level. He can be doing that as well. That's completely fine. But finally, when he makes the assessment that Cell is stronger or this amount of strength, or he makes the assessment of Cell's strength and he tries to accurately depict what his actual strength is, I don't grant that he has an actual gauge. I don't grant that he has actual powers they can use to make a valid assessment. Because one, we know that Cell got stronger after Goku died against Gohan, and then two, all the other points that we gave prior. Track the debates. Don't just track one point. Track the fucking debates. Okay. You keep on saying you're giving these bullshit points. I don't grant that they're bullshit. You're trying to use that to explain what I'm saying is fallacious. No, that's not true.
Yeah, I don't think you're tracking anything actually. So Infinity. So first and foremost, you tried to say argument from silence is not a fallacy. Yes, it is a fallacy. Just because something isn't said doesn't mean that it is the case that it is true. So, for example, if you're going on a walk, and then there's a murder next to you, just because someone just because someone doesn't say Infinity didn't kill that person doesn't mean that you fucking killed them. This is an argument from silence. This is how it works. Just because they don't specifically mention Zeno's key doesn't fucking mean that he doesn't have a lot of fucking key at all. Or he could just not be showing it. We know that people can manipulate their key on how they show. So, for example, inside the Frieza saga, they consistently put their key to 0, where they literally have no key showing. So, moving on, you said the prove he can't. Sorry. You said that they made the tablet because he was unable to sense. Prove that. Just prove it. Show me the scan. Show me whatever the fuck you want to show me. Prove that they made the tablet because Zeno was unable to send whoever the fuck. So get that shit up out of there. You can't prove it. So a I want to tackle the point where you're trying to say, well, it can be self-reflecting. The definitions can be self-reflecting as I'm sufficient enough. Well, that bites you in the ass because I can do the exact same thing, Infinity. I can literally say the exact same thing. Oh, well, it doesn't mean that. Strength doesn't mean that. Or I could just say, well, strength colloquially doesn't mean that. No, we should go based off the facts and the most explanatory power that I have in my favor, not you. You don't have anything actually showing for strength denotating fighting capacity or fighting ability inside of any significant way. What I have is Oxford Dictionary. I have other dictionaries as well. I can pull them up for you if you want to, but we can go through them one by one. And typically, what the dictionary shows is how the word is typically used within a cultural context. And within the cultural context, strength is typically referred to physically strong, physically having power. This, that, and the third has nothing to do with how you're able to fight. Strength is different from that. It's distinct from that. And you just saying, well, I think that it could be the same, isn't actually explanatory power in that you're just exerting that. I can assert that it doesn't, and we're literally equal. So polysemous, or whatever the fuck the word is, just means something with a word or phrase with multiple meanings. Every word has multiple meanings. Any word can have multiple meanings. Moving on from that, I actually want to conclude, but to just wrap this up, the scan actually says he's amplifying. So it has nothing to do with his key pool or whatever the fuck you're trying to say. He says he's literally amplifying his key. Furthermore, my definition has more explanatory power, and I think I want to conclude. This is the dumbest Dragon Ball debate I've ever had, actually.
Yeah, so okay, what he meant to say is that he has more explanatory power for his definition being an actual depiction of what they're using. He didn't mean to say that his definition has more explanatory power. I don't even know what the fuck that means, so I'm going to dismiss that point. Secondly, whenever he says that dictionary is going to be using the culturalistic, colloquial definitions, I don't grant it at all. I believe that dictionaries typically use denotation, specifically Oxford, which is the first dictionary that he pulled from, so I don't grant the point about that. Additionally, I never said that an argument from silence wasn't fallacious. We're going to move on from that. Additionally, this thing is so ass. Whenever you change the word from hiding to amplified, I don't know why that is synonymous. So whenever they say that he hiding his key, which you said that's what the scan says, and it actually does say that, by the way, I don't see why that wouldn't be synonymous with amplification in terms of just key amount. So moving on from that. Additionally, with I do have something showing, by the way, my colloquial definition being consistent. So moving on from that, I don't need to show something in which justifies the consistency of my colloquial definition. For moving on from that, I explained why the dictionary wouldn't work here, which is because of the models that they have and the powers that they have and the situation that they're in and the environment that they're in. So moving on from that, and then finally speaking, what's the justification that you can give in which explains why dictionaries use colloquial definitions rather than denotations? And then when you say polysemous means a word in which has multiple meanings, keyword has multiple meanings. So that's talking about denotations. Can have multiple meanings. It's talking about people having the ability or capacity to define it in distinct ways. If it has multiple meanings, that's denotative. Something has multiple meanings if it has multiple denotations. Colloquial, if we're talking about a colloquial definition, that wouldn't be has. That means can. That's because that's talking about informal usage. Colloquialness is talking about informal usage. Usage, okay? So a denotation is simply defined as a literal definition of something. That is not usage. That's the literal definition. You can use the literal definition, but colloquialness is talking about the usage, the application, the extension of something within a conversation or text or whatever we're talking about, whatever the topic of conversation is. So that is the relevant distinction between those two. I am not trying to amp you any fucking longer, you stupid ass nigger. Please, let's conclude. And then also, finishing my point, even though I already justified this, it's just the case that I already sent the evidence as to why you wouldn't be able to track them. It's in chat. He says, this is boring. I can't see what's happening. When Dispel's fighting, he's trying to see Dispel fight, but he's too fast for him, which is shown and highlighted by the arts as well. So he has Grand Priest create him a device in which allows him to track the actual fight, which is why he watches through the device, you fucking rats. Now, let's conclude, please.
Okay, yeah, we could go to conclusions right after I address the colloquial point. So,
Oh my God. Like he always.
okay. So yeah, I'm just okay.
Just finish your
Anyways,
point, bro. Just finish
yeah,
your point.
yeah, I
We're gonna
got you, I
wrap this
got you.
up, bro.
Yeah, I just want
Yeah,
to,
hold on.
yeah, I just want to wrap it up quickly with the colloquial point. I don't see why we have to be using a colloquial definition, nor why do I see why. Sorry, nor do I see why the denotation is incompatible with the colloquial definition. Isn't colloquial just something that verbiage people use within culture? I mean, your only point of reference is, well, I say that is true. I say that this is the colloquial definition. Well, I could say the exact same thing. I'm ready to conclude. I don't think you track my point. I don't think you address anything. I think you're just obfuscating and being a skeptic, and you're questioning the dumbest shit.
Okay, one, yes, I'm being skeptic towards the retarded. Like, you keep bringing this up. This isn't rhetorical. Calling me skeptic for questioning retarded points is not rhetorical. Secondly, I gave multiple arguments in this debate, so that doesn't work. And finally speaking, since you don't know anything at all, and I'm glad that you actually started off the sentence by saying isn't, the question by saying isn't, because you realize that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So you have to ask me for an amp. So to actually amp everybody in VC who's not aware of this, because we actually have highlighters who are aware of it, like Hermes, me, Zizu, Careless, Browley, etc. Look, just to clarify, colloquial definitions are metaphysically and logically incompatible with denotations or dictionary definitions because at least typical dictionary definitions, because colloquial definitions are talking about informal usage. If it's in a dictionary, it's formal. You fucking retard. So yes, colloquial definitions are talking about informal usage of words, meaning informal uses of words in respect to the meaning that you're trying to apply within a conversation, text, or passage, in comparison to dictionary denotations, which are talking about to the literal meaning. If it's the literal meaning, that means it's the formal definition. It's the formal meaning. So yes, analytically they're distinct, which creates some metaphysical and logical necessity for there to be a distinction within nature between the two. Okay, so you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Whenever you say that, well, we could just say that, I have a colloquial definition, and you have a colloquial definition. Therefore, I could just say the same point and say that you're false. Wait, that doesn't help you. You want to know why that doesn't help you? Because you're the one arguing. You're the one who has to argue, since you're on the affirmative for this specific point, that they're trying to get some point across, which presupposes your definition. So if we both can just say, well, they can be talking about this definition, or they can be talking about this definition, even though I gave likelihood to my interpretation of my definition, I don't need likelihood. So I can just say that it's equal interpretation, which you lose because we can't conclusively determine whether or not, due to the lack of knowledge of the definition and words that they're using, that your character is above my character through this chain scale. You fucking retard. Okay? So everything that you did within this debate is on the recording. All you did was question beg, straw man, and not understand very basic terms that even Hermes is able to understand what that shitty ass Lucifer PFP. Okay, so let's conclude, and do not say, "Oh, we can conclude after this $20,000 point I'm gonna make." Like, no, let's conclude.
I just want to address that real quick. So I think you're
Oh my.
no. I'm gonna address that. Yeah, thank you. So I think you're equivocating denotation. Denotation isn't just the literal meaning of a word. That's actually retarded. There's literally colloquial definitions inside of the fucking dictionary. Like, what are we talking about? Denotation can also be the primary meaning of a word. So if it's the primary meaning of strength, then that's what we're gonna go with. Unless you have more or other evidence that we should go with that's context dependent, that may have a different denotation, that may have a different primary meaning to strength, then we're going to go with that. So don't equivocate the term of denotation. It isn't just the literal definition. It can also be the primary meaning of the word. So if we're going to go based off the primary meaning of the word, why we go based off the secondary meaning? You have to actually give context or explanatory power to that.
My God, are you fucking retarded? The reason why it's the primary definition, yo, Thomas, yo, Tom, and BC, yo, Tom, please listen to that retarded point you just gave. The reason why, and please mute him, Hermes, because he's going to try to interrupt. The reason why it's the primary definition, or I apologize, the reason why it's the literal definition is because it's the primary definition. You fucking idiots. There's no such thing as a literal definition in terms of what literally means, because then that would mean that there's a definition which corresponds with reality, which obviously is false, because that would make it objective. But we know definitions are subjective, okay? They're subject to the mind. They can be changed and influenced by our opinions and our experiences and our koya. Yes, so it is the case that by literal, it's talking about the primary usage. I apologize, the primary meaning. Yes, that's correct. Which is why colloquial definitions are informal. But whenever you say it's the primary meaning, you fucking retard, that is context dependent. So it can be the primary meaning within America because of our environment and everything along the lines of that. But guess what? When you use dictionaries and which are established from America that's not equivocated to dictionaries within Japan or wherever the fuck Dragon Ball was made. And then secondly, dictionaries that are established within America and which are supposed to model things off of realistic events are not going to be equivocated, especially within Japan as well, are not going to be equivocated to fictional pieces. So if it's the case that they are using the definition that you're using in some way, I don't see why it wouldn't be altered in a specific way in which allows it to fit within Dragon Ball, since we know the definition that you gave presupposes naturalistic laws in a way in which is compatible completely. And then secondly speaking, if it is the case that they're not using the definition, they could just have their own definition within Japan or their own definition within the verse specifically to make sure everything is consistent with the word strength so it can collaborate with the power system that they have and then everything else in which is unconventional. Can we
Okay.
conclude?
No. We're not going to conclude because I actually
Oh,
want to
like he's
address what
so
you said.
insecure.
No. Now all of a sudden it's what you wanted to conclude to. Thank you for muting him. So when we refer to primary means the most important, the most relevant. If you actually study linguistics, you would realize that there's something called salience. And what salience is, we go based off the most relevant context inside of a particular word or verbiage that we use. So when we refer to salience is referring to specifically what's the most relevant. If we go and say that the primary definition of strength is this thing that I sent there, well then guess what, Infinity? You would be conceding to salience, and salience is one of the most important aspects to linguistics, where we go based off what's the most salient verbiage of the word that's being used. I'm ready to conclude. And even wait, real quick.
Okay,
And
no,
even inside of
you say that.
Japanese
You
culture,
say that.
even
You
in
say that.
hold on, even inside of Japanese culture, I also want to mention that it actually does refer to just raw strength, raw power, and not fighting capacity or anything like that. And I can actually prove that. So I'm gonna send a scan.
Okay, so when bro, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, bro. We need a new moderator.
Yo,
Like, this nigga's
yo,
retarded.
my bad. Hold on, bro.
No,
Hold on.
Okay,
Wait.
one.
Midtop,
Hold
you
on, one.
finish
If
your
he
point or
forgets
not?
a point,
Yeah, I'm finished.
if he forgets a point, because no,
Okay.
mute this nigga. If he forgets a point because he can't track, that's all his fault. Like, you can say it whenever it's his turn to speak, my nigga. You don't see me like, oh no, I forgot a point. Now, secondly, we said that talking about raw strength. That, like I said, that can't be the case because we understand that within Dragon Ball, they consistently say that a character is stronger, and then they don't even punch them. They just use Ki Blast, for example, and then that ends the battle. So it's most likely that they're talking about the fighting capacity in the sense where it's exhausting the attributes of each individual character. Additionally, when you say that they're talking about a raw strength, that implies that they're talking about just base physical capacity, not, for example, ki, which wouldn't even make any sense in the first place when it comes to assessing who's stronger. If they just say that this person's the same strength within the instance, all that would mean is that this person is the same strength or this person is stronger than the other person physically. But we understand that physical strength isn't what determines who wins. So I can just say real quick, because your position is that your character beats the fuck out of my character. So I can even grant hypothetically that they're talking about raw strength or physical strength in the sense where punching, kicking, all that. But I do not grant that he has a counter to something like sales regeneration or sales Kamehameha wave or something along the lines of that. So that wouldn't help you at all. And then finally speaking, when you say it's the most relevant definition, I don't grant that. That's not what it says at all. It says the most primary definition. So it's the main definition. Does not mean the most relevant definition. Unless you're using relevant as and primary synonymously, which wouldn't make any sense for you to just repeat yourself. You're saying it's the primary definition, and then you go on to say that it's the most relevant definition. Like, I don't accept that we use the most relevant definition in scenarios such as this where we need case analysis. And then also when you said that they're using the definition in Japan, like, I don't grant that either. Can we conclude? Like, this is retarded.
Yo, we done?
Are you done?
Yeah, you just want to circle it the entire time. Can we conclude?
Yeah, we could conclude. I'm done. I'm done.
Oh,
I think I proved my point.
Bro. I love you, bro. I love you, bro.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you for
done.
concluding,
I'm done.
bro.
I think
ask you a
we
question?
lost.
Do you guys want to state your
Can I-
conclusions or just like that's it? We're done.
Nah, I'm
No,
done.
that's
I'm
what
done.
that's what low tiers do.
I'm
But
done.
can I ask you a question, Midtop?
Are we gonna
Is
go
there a
in?
reason why you never
Are we
changed
gonna
your
move
name?
on? Are we gonna move on to what you said about win
Bro,
cons?
please, hold on. Please do not be weird and try to extend the debate to 5 hours. Can we
You
just
mentioned
have
win
it
cons, bro. I haven't even mentioned the win
Okay,
con. Like
I
you're gonna go
understand that.
into regeneration and shit like that. Like, come
Do
on,
you
bro.
want to make it like this?
Wait,
Do
let me
you want to
clarify.
just
Hold on,
make it to where whoever wins the debate?
Yeah,
Yeah,
hold on,
sure.
let me clarify.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
supposed to be hold on. That was supposed to be a response to you saying the strength shit. So I just want to make it based upon all that we argued, and maybe I can give a judgment off of that. Are you fine with that?